August today. This is Sunday, and today we have a class program around crosses or cruce. So we hope you enjoy it. As usual, we have two parts. The first part is beginners and improvers for 45 minutes, a little break, and then the second part, 45 minutes as well, for intermediate and up. So crosses, this is the program today, and we'll have a look at what different types of crosses they are and how to use them.
So our quick disclaimer just before we start as always, please make sure that you are well enough to attend this class and note that by joining in any form you are automatically agreeing to the terms and conditions that are stated in the description of this video as well as on the website. Now without further ado.
So we start. So basically, as a quick introduction, crosses is really a part of the fundamentals of tango. And we do them in different shapes and sizes and forms, if you like, and colors. And they're going to be very important if you just started tango for you to practice, because we use it all the time. As a matter of fact, they are so important that there's an entire system which is called a cross system, named after them, and we'll understand later why this is called a cross system. But for now, let's have a little warm-up. We are going to work on the connection and work together. So as usual, I'm going to face my partner, and I'll make sure that I'm not resisting the urge of being a bit on the left, so really face her. I connect with my center, and I'm going to invite with my left arm, then my right. My head stays straight, and I start having a good connection with the center. I push with my back leg here, that leads to the projection, and I follow suit with my own step. So, a couple of things for leaders. First of all, make sure that you have a good connection with the floor. That means you're not going to bend your legs unnecessarily. And two, have this nice push against your partner, but it should be constant, so don't have a sudden push, because you need that element of constant pressure in your embrace, and that actually will lead to a good connection with your partner.
So followers, make sure that you are not hurrying to transfer your weight to the back. Take your time, stay with the intention forward towards the leader, so that will allow much more connection the moment that we step in together.
Okay, so I'll play, maybe we can fix this. Today we play Edgardo Donato. Here we go. A oscuras. So you warm up for you guys. For you to practice.
Decís que soy culpable de toda tu tristeza, que todo en torno mío se vuelve sin sabor, y al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza, como por una copa repleta de licor. Yo quiero que me digas con calma y sin reproche, y que en las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad, claves tus ojos negros, sombreados por mi noche, y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Augura, yo sentí tu primer beso, augura, me llamó tu corazón, y mi alegría fue cantando en la moneda por aquella calle larga de nuestra vida. Augura,
Right, so
augura,
pause this video if you want to warm up a bit longer. So today is all about crosses. So crosses, of course, as you most know, are going to refer to this step where one leg is crossed compared to the other, and this actually come in different sizes and shapes. So today we're going to have a look at back crosses, which is the mechanism where the leg which is free is going to cross but to the back this way here. We're going to show you a bit in more detail how to do that. And this is not to be confused with front crosses where the leg which is crossing is the one which is in front of the other. Yeah, so today in beginners we'll do mostly back crosses, but we'll have a few examples of front crosses in the second section. We have another session planned entirely with more front crosses for beginners next week. So let's take a look at the back cross. So I'm not going to explain the lead. Would you like to explain back crosses for us?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay. Can you take the seat? It's going to
All
take a
right.
while.
Okay.
Okay, guys. So there's a few things happening in order for that back cross to happen in a comfortable way. So first of all, you want to have awareness of your standing knee. That in order to create space for a back cross, the standing knee needs to be a little bit flexed. So I don't like to say too bent, we don't need that, but it needs to be available. So that means that if my standing knee is very hard, there's no space for that cross to happen. Second element is you need to bring your heel off the floor of that same leg that has the knee bent, so that you create space for the leg to go in a tighter cross. So we're going to have tighter or deeper crosses. This is going to depend on the leads. It's going to depend on circumstances. So for now, let's try both to understand. I'll just lift a bit my dress so you can see. So I'm going to release my right leg back, and then I'm going to bring it forward, and I'm going to push the floor from the toes, so releasing the heel off the floor and bringing it in. And see if you can do that at the same time. Now ideally you should be able to do that without holding yourself onto anything, so you can really work the muscles of your calf muscles and your ankles. But if you need some help, you're more than welcome to hold yourself to a surface. So then you can try uncross and do the other side. So I'm going to uncross here. Now my standing leg is straight, and so it's my free leg as well. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring that left leg into the back cross, and I'm going to press the floor, toes and heel off the floor to create space for that back cross. If you need to hold yourself to a surface, it's going to be the same thing, only you can then have a little bit more support. I'm going to show you in this angle. So straight legs and in and cross and in. So it's really helping your ankles to work if you really press on the toes and bring the heel up. Now when you bring that leg in for that back cross, try if you can not to go into flat foot, but go into toes heel. So to smooth the transition into toes heel, rather than thinking this. Of course, this would also be possible if there's a dynamic that is more grounded. However, try not to make that as the setting to be always like that. It depends on how the transition happens. So start first smooth, and then you can try a little bit more grounding. Yeah, so a few exercises for you for now. So let's go bring it back.
So I would like to explain a little bit more in detail about the lead for the back cross. Basically, the reason I have this in my hand is to visualize the axis of the follower. So what we're going to do as a leader, and we're going to show it of course in couple in a second, but we're going to have a bit of a movement forward and diagonal back to the right leg. Okay, so it's going to be forward and slightly back and diagonal on the right, and we can repeat. Now the reason I have this in my hands is I'm going to visualize the axis of my follower, the idea of the back cross is to send that leg forward and to catch it before it gets onto the floor. So I'm talking about the right leg of the follower. So I catch this right leg and I bring it inwards by my transfer of axis. So my transfer axis is going to call her to go back, and I'm calling this leg inwards before she has the time to step. And of course I don't go too far. So if I go too far with my axis, she will want to basically step on that leg. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but in this case it's not what we are after. So I'm going to catch this and see she's going to feel that I'm asking her to cross. So I'm going to go forward with a little bit of strength with my push on the back leg, and I'm going to go diagonally, slightly back. This angle, 1 and 2. Note that my side step slightly diagonal back is not very big, because if it's too big, then my follower is going to have to do a very, very wide back cross like this. It's not very comfortable. So I'm going to make it not too big. 1, 2, and I collect. 1, 2, and I collect. So I push and pull, not with my arms, my frame is not moving, but with my own body, with my entire axis. 1 and 2. 1 and 2, and then I carry on. Good. So let's show you how it looks in a couple. I'm going to do a side step and I'm going to change my weight. Now this is a way to get into cross system. I'm going to start forward with my left, and she's also going with the left backwards. I'm going to send this leg and catch this leg before it reaches the floor to get into a cross. Now I get my feet together and I can repeat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
So really wait for the transfer of axis to transfer your weight into the cross followers, yeah? Because even though you know, okay, it's going to be a back cross, try not to rush that moment of transferring weight on the cross. Should happen at the same time as the leader, so indicate with your axis with a little bit of weight towards his center, so we can create good connection between both of us, and we are not going to transfer weight at different times.
So note that this shape, the shape of what I'm doing with my axis is actually sending the leg and take it back. So if I do it, if I show you from above, it would be something like this, like a hook. Yes, I'm sending it forward and I catch it back with a little bit of diagonal. So it's 1 and 2. Be careful that it's not, again, too much back, because the follower is not going to be able to do a cross which is too deep or too wide. The timing is on the beat. 1 beat to go and 1 beat to cross. So you take your time, leaders. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now to exit, I'm going to have a couple of options. The option that is easy is to change my weight, get forward with the right, and we continue. So the first step is going to be in the in lane, which means that I leave my partner on my right hand side for 1 step, and as soon as I have my left free to go forward, I'm going to slightly reposition myself to face up. So it's going to be 1, 2, change of weight, and then 3, and then here I have again replace myself to be in front of my follower.
So just one tip for now, at the end of the transfer of the weight, when you are done with your cross, indicate to the leader that you definitely have transferred the weight by sending a little bit of intention of your lower stance, hip towards hip. This is not exactly necessary, but it's going to help the leader have the complete understanding that you definitely transfer the weight, so he's going to feel via his hip that has happened.
So for me, I need to make sure that I'm grounding myself when I step onto my right leg. So what does it mean? It means I'm not going to stay on my tippy toes here, because this would be a different step, which we'll actually cover later. But here I really want her to change her weight with the right crossing to the back, so therefore I need to almost sink into that hip. So I add weight so that she feels she has to change her weight as I'm putting my foot down. 1, 2, yeah, really go to the floor here. I'm standing myself a little bit down, so the center of gravity is traveling a tiny bit downwards, and then I'm free to do another one. Music?
Yeah, let's try.
Alright, we give you a few minutes to practice your back crosses.
E al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza como por la copa repleta de licor. Yo quiero que me dices con calma y sin reproche y que en las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad clave tus ojos negros sombreados por mi noche y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Augura, yo sentí tu primer beso, augura, me llamó tu corazón y mi alegría fue cantando en la colera por aquella calle larga de nuestra tierra. Augura, hoy me muero por tu olvido, augura, hoy sangrando mi dolor. Y la luna, si el sol es esa luna, quebrarán estas tinieblas donde me perdió tu amor.
Okay, so one thing which is interesting, leaders, and I'm going to use my roll again, this one, is that I can now play a little bit with that sequence and try to have the follower cross the other leg on the other side. So if you look from above, let's say this one here, your axis is going to go 1 and 2 and then repeat. Yeah, so it's a bit of a zigzag if you do the repeat back cross. Now instead of doing that, I'm going to do the first the same, I'm going to repeat and the other side. So this lead from above starts to look like an infinity or maybe an 8 on the side signal, where I'm going to go forward. And then I'm going to take this leg, I'm going to bring it back and take it, and then bring it forward, and take it here. So it's almost like I use every leg to cross to the back by going to the front of my axis. So I'm on the toes, I go a little bit back, now I don't step anymore, I stay where I am. And I use the full axis being forward and being back, forwards and back. So note that here my axis is traveling and is doing this kind of infinity or 8 shape on the floor.
So take your time now, we're going to transfer from side to side. Take your time again to feel all the stages of that axis transfer. Do not rush into the next one, otherwise again it will create a disconnect.
So I start the same as before, and I go cross. Now I catch this leg and I catch this leg here, sending it a bit forward and a little bit back, going to the front and the back of my axis. 1, 2, 3, 4. And maybe to finish, something, change of weight, and I finish just moving forward. This angle. Here, this is initiation. As soon as I'm here, I use my axis. And when I'm happy, change of weight. 1, 2, 3, and so on to exit.
So the faster it's going to be, the less time you're going to have to transfer the weight to the heel. So there's nothing wrong with keeping the weight on the toes and not lowering the heel. If you've got a little bit more time, it's slow, then it does help a little bit to do that weight transfer if you put the heel down. Now the main thing is do not use your foot flat on the floor to recover from that cross. So go through the toes and heel as we had a look at the first exercise we started with today. Go to have the proper foot articulation, toes and then heel. Maybe we can demonstrate it when we
Sure, I have one thing for leaders, which is very important here. So leaders, do not think that this is led with the arms, because this is going to have too much movement with too little time for the follower to understand. So you are really using your entire body, and therefore it's actually more coming from your center, from your point of connection, using your entire body to take in and out of this little 8, if you like, or infinity, which is very, very important. Which means that the follower will have, and the leader, of course, will have to have a bit of a tighter connection. Yes, so you push against each other in order to feel the movements, and this is how it's going to work.
Maybe we can show it closer.
Sure.
Camera, you reckon?
So I'm going to start with my side step. That's initiation, and then I'm going to go in and out of that step here. Now, one thing, leaders, I would like to mention is, as you can see, every time the follower puts her foot down, she's going a tiny bit back. A tiny bit, not much, which means that it's possible that at some point you feel that the follower is starting to be more and more forward, which is the reason that sometimes you have to go a little bit forward to adjust for that mini step that she does to the back. Let me show you. See, after a while here, we are more and more apart, and it starts to feel a bit uncomfortable. So what do? I reposition myself to be a bit closer. Now, in terms of footwork, you can either keep your feet apart, or you can touch and go, as I call it, as far as you come to the same location. Touch and go.
So the cross is going to be only as wide as the side step of the leader. So when you wonder how big that space is going to be between your ankles, don't worry too much about having a preconceived idea on how much it should be closed or open, because this is going to be changing every time. So if the leader is doing a very small side step, the cross is going to be tighter. If he's doing a bigger side step, the cross is going to be wider, so what we call deeper cross.
So, let's have a look with music into that repeated back cross on both sides.
tristeza, que todo en torno mío se vuelve sin amor, y al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza, como por la copa repleta de licor. Yo quiero que me dices con calma y sin reproche, y que las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad, claves tus ojos negros, sombreados por mi noche, y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Augura, yo sentí tu primer beso, augura, me llamó tu corazón, y mi alegría fue cantando la colera por aquella calle larga de nuestra vida. Augura, hoy me muero por tu olvido. Augura, voy sangrando mi dolor, y la luna y el sol es esa luna quebrarán estas tinieblas donde me perdió.
So, as you could see from what we did just now, there is one exit I used which was not with a change of weight, which was straight with my left forward, and therefore we're in cross system. So what we call cross system is where I step with my left forward in this case, but she also steps with her left backwards, which means that if we are facing each other, we are not quad synchronized. Of course we are, but it feels like we are not going with the leg that is convenient to go, which is the leg where we are just walking towards each other. So the cross system is going to be a system where we are on both the left or both the right leg, and it's called this way for a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons is that it can be resolved with a cross to go back to parallel system. So what I did here, I went with the left, I led the cross to the follower, and then I continue in parallel system. So I'm not going to get into too much detail because we are going to cover this in a succession session, but I just wanted to inform about this cross system. Let's carry on. So leaders, what's interesting here is once we have achieved the follower and the back cross, you can start pulling with the right part of your embrace and your right hip to indicate to the follower that you want her to do another back step. So basically what you want to do here is for the follower to do back step, do a forward step with only one leg, and then back step again, going back to the original place. So let's show you how it means, or what it means, or how it looks. Here, one and two, and then you carry on as you were before. So of course this is led, this is not a choreography, so what I'm doing, leaders, is I'm going to place her to back cross. I feel that she's actually changed her weight, and I'm going to open a little bit with the right part of my waist. Be careful, leaders, not to open with the left, because if you do, she's going to get into backward show. Look at this. Here, one, and see here, she's going back, but at the same time she opens, and it's a bit confusing. So I make sure that I only open with the right part of my embrace, the left I keep pretty much where it is, and actually it's calling her forward to a cross.
So, because the leading is quite clear to step forward once more after the first cross, really enter with your center. Do not feel tempted to go with your upper body just because suddenly you feel like you're going to repeat that cross and you might feel like you're caught off guard. So your transfer needs to be very stable on that first cross in order to then be able to attack quickly with that left leg again forward for the next cross. So really enter with your center. You're going to feel that a gap is created at the hip level of the leader and the side of the body, so that's perfect for you then to fill in that gap. Yeah?
So one question that leaders might ask is, can we do more than two? Yes, you can, but the more you do, the harder it gets, because you're suddenly running out of thing to pull or to actually dissociate with. So if we do it maybe with this angle, you'll see that we can do a little bit more, but 3 would perhaps be the ultimate limit. 1, 2, and then 3 here. I already hit at my maximum dissociation, which means that I need to pivot my partner and exit. Here, 1, 2, 3, and there. Note that in the case of 3 of them, I have to pivot a little bit at the end to recenter myself to the follower, otherwise I will be too much disconnected because she will be too far. It's a bit more complicated, more difficult, but you can try if you like.
So in terms of footwork, feet articulation, so it's just repeating that same cross, we're not changing to the other side. So you want to create a smooth transition again by having, as explained before many times, in this class, so feel free to rewind if you need, heel off the floor, creating a space with the knee slightly bent, and then you're going to repeat, step and repeat. Now the quicker it is, the less time you're going to have to go on the heel. But it's okay, because you can still create that repeated cross just being on the toes. Yeah, so there's less time to adjust, but how quick it's going to be depends on how quick the leader is moving to the back.
Right, let's try with music.
De toda tu tristeza, que todo en torno mío se vuelve sin sabor, y al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza, como por una copa repleta de licor. Yo quiero que me dices con calma y sin reproche, y que en las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad, la de tus ojos negros sombreados por mi noche, y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Augura, yo sentí tu primer beso, augura, me llamó tu corazón y mi alegría fue cantando en la colera por aquella calle larga de nuestra vida. Augura, hoy me muero por tu olvido, augura, voy sangrando mi dolor. Y la luna, si el sol es esa luna, quebrarán estas tinieblas donde me perdió tu amor.
Okay, so lots of things you can do with the back cross. As a matter of fact, it's one of my favorites because it's very versatile. You can do different exits. So one of the things that you can do, and the exit here, is to play a little bit with the leg which is free for you, which is the left leg. So in this case, I'm going to lead a back cross, and rather than sending her backwards and I just go forward myself, I'm going to invade a little bit of space with my left. That actually creates a little bit of a sacada, so I'm pushing a little bit her leg, the thigh enter in contact, and she feels she has to do a little bolero on the floor. So it's going to be, for me, 1, 2, and as I exit, I have a bit of rotation of the follower to my left, so therefore I can push with my right. Now, a word of caution, leaders. Word of caution, the leg which is going forward is the left. Make sure that you are touching with the thigh and not the knee. It's very, very tempting when you stand up to actually try to push a leg with the knee pointed. It's very unpleasant because it's very harsh. So do not worry too much about the lead, just enter the space whilst dissociating to the left. Yes, it's 1, back cross, and here, just dissociating, entering the space, establishing contact with the thigh, and simply getting into the front of your axis. So I'm free on the left, and that's what I have to do, and I don't do something like this. No. Okay, so it's there, and I either come back or I finish here.
Okay, maybe we can show the signals together and then I'll give you a few tips.
Here, and little bolero, and coming back. We'll do it a few times. One, back cross, and dissociating to the left, push that leg, and coming back.
So just one thing for that bolero, because I think for the crosses we are already a bit more familiar with by now. But for that bolero, you really need to arrive to that back leg. So toes, heel, standing your center over the heel to be able to bring that leg, taking your time without feeling that you have to hurry to arrive there, because you are establishing a good stability on the standing leg. And then you're going to go forward with your center, so don't feel tempted to just go forward with your upper body, to filling in the gap again for that forward step. Okay? Maybe we do it one more time.
Here, back cross, and alternatively with my little bolero, I push a bit here, and I simply go forward. Now, as you could see here, what you can do 2 steps back if you like, with a ton of weight in the middle, going twice with the right, or you can do a little ocho, and she will actually face this direction. It's entirely up to you how you exit. 1, 2, little push, take your time, and then this would be an ocho situation, and finish.
Okay, so maybe an exercise to do on your own would be to try and do that back cross, then uncross, small back step, taking your center over the standing leg to bring it into that position now, smallly on the floor. You're crossing but you're not changing the weight. And then getting out with the same leg, pushing from the standing leg to really enter the space ahead of you.
Okay? So let's try with music.
Que todo en torno mío se vuelve sin sabor, y al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza como por la copa represa del licor. Yo quiero que me guíe con calma y sin reproche, y que en las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad clave tus ojos negros sombreados por mi noche, y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Augura, yo sentí tu primer beso, augura, me llamó tu corazón, y mi alegría fue cantando en la colera por aquella calle larga de nuestra unión. Augura, hoy me muero por tu olvido, augura, hoy sangrando mi dolor, y la luna, si el sol es ella luna, quebrarán estas tinieblas donde me perdió tu amor.
conclude today, so this was back crosses. There are many other variations on the back cross. Maybe it's up to you to try to see that what works for you. But at the end of the day, it's all about like being clear with your intention. So never rush your back crosses, because the follower is going to take the time to send the leg in a nice way and in a way that actually makes her stay and feel stable. So
Let's demonstrate.
Yeah, let's have a little demonstration to finish today. We hope you enjoyed it, and this is Edgardo Donato, Aos Coras.
Decir que soy culpable de toda tu tristeza, que todo en torno mío se vuelve sin sabor, y al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza, como por una copa repleta de alcohol. Yo quiero que me dices con calma y sin reproche, y que en las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad, clave tus ojos negros, sombreados por mi noche, y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Augura, yo sentí tu primer beso, augura, me llamó tu corazón, y mi alegría fue cantando en la colera por aquella calle larga de nuestro vida. Augura, hoy me muero por tu olvido, augura, hoy sangrando el dolor, y la luna y el sol se echan luna, quebrarán estas tinieblas donde me perdió tu amor.
Thank you for watching. We'll be back in a few moments for your second part. Intermediate and up.
Enjoy your break, guys.
So welcome back to your class today around crosses. This is the second part of today for intermediate and advanced dancers. And today we have a look at both back and front crosses for intermediate and up, and how to mix them in different contexts and situations to actually create your own and to make like something new out of crosses. So of course we all know the typical front and back cross by now. But let's have a look at a few other situations where we're going to lead that cross with a little bit of more energy or with something a bit different. So what I do here, I start with a colgada that leads into a back cross, and I'm going to ground my partner for that pivot to be a bit sharper. So let's take a look. One, two, three. And here I am in americana. So therefore I can, for now, and this way. So this sequence we saw in another context is quite a nice one with a lot of energy. So let's take a look at the different components, and I'll start with the first step, which is a side step. It can also be a forward step, but you need to send your partner a little bit to your right to have an easy access to that sacada. So we're going to do a sacada with your left leg onto the right leg of the follower, and as you do the sacada, you're going to expand the embrace so that she feels there's space for her to go a little bit to the back of her axis, and you're going to take her right back in to have that back cross followed by grounding and pivot. So this is how it looks. I'm going to go and send my partner away, take her back into back cross, and immediately press down and pivot at the same time. I actually have to flex my knees. It's easier to indicate that element of sharp pivot, and we end up in americana.
So there's a few things we need to understand here. It's first of all, this is going to be a tight cross because the pivot is going to happen with our ankles together. So it's important that once you're going back into that micro colgado, when you're coming back, you're going to think you're going to replace your standing leg, so very tight cross here, as you can see, before your pivot. So you're going to cross, transfer the weights, and then you're going to pivot. So see it as two separate actions, even though it's going to be very fast and going to be blending in quite quickly. You really want to understand that first, transfer the weight and then pivot. Okay, so it's important to have that in mind. And use the technique that we were speaking about in the first class. Make space by pushing from the toes, liberating the heel off the floor, and the knee is going to have a little bit of availability to bend a little bit to create space for that leg to be replaced. Yeah?
So I open a little bit the embrace as I do my side step, so that there is space for my sacada to happen. And as I'm here, I'm going to lead my follower to the back of axis, take her back, and this is when I'm going to press down to have this sharp rotation, and we exit in americana. We'll see how we can exit in an interesting way with the cross later on.
Let's show you a different angle. Okay.
So, interesting combination here with a lot of different energies that are really explored, that leads to that front cross. So leaders, one thing that you need to remember is that you cannot go too much to the front of your axis because she's going to step. So you have to do a sacada, open at the same time, stay a little bit to the back of your axis to be able to pull her back. Because if you go too much front and you're fully on the left leg, the weight of the follower will probably take you to do another step, especially if you go with a lot of energy with that sacada.
So when you're coming back from the micro colgado, so you have the sacada with the release of the leg and the cross here, I'm not going to just pivot because I know there's a pivot. There's quite a lot of compression on the frame, and that is going to help me not only do my pivot, but also change height on my standing leg. Okay, so this is how you get really nice sharp pivot, heels together, but no, do not have weight on your left leg. The pivot happens on the right.
So basically it looks like an embroskate, and of course it's led in this case, and the follower is using the leader's energy. So as a leader, I really need to go and really frankly go around, towards the floor. Now be careful that you keep your follower in axis and you don't actually push her away from you by doing so. So you have to be careful about that lead. 1, 2, and 3. So we can show you with a bit of music. Let's use the same song. Ideally you'd have a little bit of an accent in the music, but let's use it this one anyway.
De toda tu tristeza, de todo en torno mío se vuelve sin sabor, y al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza, como por una copa repleta de licor. Yo quiero que me digas con calma y sin reproche, y que en las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad, clave tus ojos negros, sombreados por mi noche, y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Augura, yo sentí tu primer beso, augura, me llamó tu corazón, y mi alegría fue cantando en la colera por aquella calle larga de nuestra vida. Augura, hoy me muero por tu olvido, augura, hoy sangrando mi dolor.
Right, so I'd like to propose a different ending. Here we use a channel flame and a side step to finish, but it's actually interesting to be in americana because you can lead your partner to do a cross. Now what's interesting here is that the leg that is crossing is not going to be the left leg as usual, but the right leg of the follower. So that actually is using what we did a little bit in a beginner class where we talked about axis. I'm going to be in americana after that sharp turn, and I'm going to send her forward. She's going to step onto her left, I'm on my right, and I'm going to use my axis to send her out and in. Yeah, so it's out and in. From the top it's out and in. So she will feel that this leg is being sent out and sent in into a cross. You need to be very precise, leaders. One thing that you will need to do, because I'm going to do a cross as well with my other leg, is to make sure that as you do your forward step from americana, you need to go a little bit away from your follower, because remember, you need to give the space for 2 feet to get in, and it can't be too close, of course, because your hips are going to collide. So when you do your forward step in americana, you need to send her a little bit away, and you're going a little bit away as well. So there's a little bit of a gap between you, so that you can both do a front cross using the technique that Paula explained earlier, except this time it's the front. So you use your full foot articulation, leaders, and you don't, of course, collapse on that leg. You are really having a good control here. Take your time for the uncross, and then go whenever you're ready forward. So I would recommend at least one full beat or even two if you want to really recover and then gently go with control.
Okay, maybe we can show it together.
So we are the americana, and I'm going to go forward and send my partner to cross to the front, transfer my weight and hers, and then continue here. Yeah, so there's a transfer of weight here, so if we do it without stopping, 1, 2, and 3, here. Note that the hips are very, very close, so it's a bit tricky not to take the follow space. This is why you need to create a bit of space at the beginning. Here, and then gently there. If you want, you can actually start tilting a little bit forward leaders to indicate not one, but two little change of weight. 1 and 2, and then recover from that position. Just let me show you. Maybe this angle. Here, 1 and 2, and then gently you finish with the fourth step from americana.
Okay, so in this case, again, just take your time. Technique now, the front cross is going to be toes, heel, and uncross. So really trying to go through that situation and create good stability of the standing leg. Press the heel down, and that is going to send the other leg to uncross.
1, 1 and 2, and gently finish with whichever you like from americana, and you have multiple options as you know. So if we join all the dots together, I'm going to start with my side or forward step here, and boom, 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 and I maybe finish this way perhaps. Or, because you're an americana, you can actually repeat that same sequence. No, sorry, side step. So, 1, 2, and here you are going to go into a side step and immediately repeat that little sequence. If you want to chain it, here, reposition yourself to make sure that you're facing your partner. Pin, 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 and side again, and so on and so forth.
Should we try with music?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perdiste la cabeza como por la copa repleta de licor. Yo quiero que me digas con calma y sin reproche, y que las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad, la de tus ojos negros sombreados por mi noche, y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Augura, yo sentí tu primer beso. Augura, me llamó tu corazón, y mi alegría fue cantando la colera por aquella calle larga de nuestro pie. Augura, hoy me muero por tu olvido. Augura, voy sangrando mi dolor, y la luna y el sol se quebrarán estas tinieblas donde me perdió tu amor.
Alright, so leaders and followers, this is a very interesting little sequence working on both back and front crosses. Now let's take a look at a classic that happens when there's a little bit of a colgada leading to a front cross. This I'm sure that you've seen elsewhere, or if not with us perhaps, because it's a real classic. So I'm going in this case to play with the lanes. I'm going to change the lane. I'm going to indicate to my partner from here that the embrace is going to open by dropping my shoulder and repositioning myself a bit straighter. And I'm going to go forward and here open into front cross and reconnecting to her as she finishes her decoration. And of course, whichever you want from here.
Okay, reposition.
Here. 1, 2, 3, and for example, this parada followed by a 90-degree turn.
So in this case, we're going to have opening from close embrace to open embrace, and you're going to have to readjust the arm if you have around the leader's shoulders. You're going to have to readjust it to the middle of the back, so that when we open the embrace, we actually have a container and good readjusting position to keep the frame together with elasticity. Then you can, if you want, so usually if we do this step without pivoting the standing leg, I would go straight into the cross facing the leader. But as an embellishment, and I believe you weren't leading it now, it can be both right, it can be led as well. So as an embellishment, or if you feel that there is extra rotation during that moment of the pivot, so when the moment when you open the embrace and go into the cross, that is going to create a pivot before the cross. So it's not you're going to cross and then pivot on 2 feet. You're going to go into pivot and cross, changing the weight at the end. Then from there, you're going to utilize the fact you have good contact with the frame, and you can go into your planeo here with a little bit of out of axis intention, just to make the best out of the elasticity of the open frame that you have there. So just for now, remember, you're going to do that big step, pivot and cross. So it's not cross and then pivot. Pivot, you're going to bring already the foot into the crossing position, but you're going to pivot before you transfer the weight at the end of that pivot. Yeah?
So if I were to lead it, leaders, I would actually have to have a little bit of association when I do my little
Bless you.
my little sneezing, when I do my little colgada. 1, I sander away with the opening of the embrace, and at the same time I have a little bit of pivot, but make sure that you're not pivoting too much. If you're pivoting too much, she's going to get into corte and put that foot down on the floor. So it's really tiny, just for the follower to understand that she has to pivot a little bit as she's crossing, and that's what you need to do. There's no change of weight, so it's 1, there's a bit of down movement here, and then immediately taking your back to the other side as you're bringing your foot forward and establish contact with her left leg.
Okay, maybe show it one more time.
So my recommendation for leaders, what I find nice to do is to reconnect at the end. You can keep the embrace open if you like, but it doesn't have the same effect. So you are going to open and send your partner away. She's crossing. You're on the other leg, of course. She's crossing. You're going to bring your foot forward. At this stage, know that I'm fully on my right leg. This is a corte for leaders. I'm going to start the planeo, or at least the pivot. She's going to decorate with the planeo. But as she does, I'm going to start pushing on my right leg to go towards her. And I use the full foot articulation, so I end up on my left leg fully, the front of my axis and I establish contact here with the chest. I could, if I wanted to just do the cross. I could, if I wanted to, finish here and then keep it open, but I think it's not as nice as reconnecting on the chest, because what I like in this little sequence is this contrast being close, we open with a bit of sudden urgency, and we close straight away. So there's a bit of life in the embrace, which makes it interesting.
Also, one thing that I wanted to add: once you go in from into that, so from close embrace to open embrace, and you have the help of the frame, you can utilize the frame to help you pivot a little bit. So I'm going to show you in the grid now. So I'm utilizing the availability of the frame that I have here, engaging my center, and then utilizing that to have a sharp pivot.
As you are down when you open the embrace, leaders, because you're in that position, like this little corte, remember that you're actually going to transfer the weight on the left, but on the straight knee. Do not do this, do not stay down. Recover and go up all the way until you establish contact with the chest, and then you can leader forward by you going back into your back leg. In this case, it's just a matter of having the heel go slightly down with control, and then perhaps in this case do another step to finish.
Music?
Music.
Por aquella calle larga de nuestra vida, augura, hoy me muero por tu olvido, augura, hoy sangrando mi dolor, y la luna si el sol es esa luna, quebrarán estas tinieblas donde me perdió tu amor.
So, let's carry on with another example of back crosses, whilst the leader is doing back crosses as well. This is going to be a sequence in cross system. So I'm going to send the right leg of the follower doing a back cross while I'm crossing my right leg to the front, and vice versa. So the interesting thing here is to build a cross system and to make sure that we have enough rotation to the right to create enough space for the hips to pass for both of us, and the foot of course. So I'm going to start as usual with a side step or a change of weight, it's up to you guys. And I'm going to do a first step here, and I'm going to take care to cross the front to the back, whilst I'm crossing to the front. So let me do it without stopping. Here. 1 and 2, and then here I continue with crossing to the other side. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Bum, 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 bum. And to exit, I could do simply perhaps a back control or any other sequence. Remember that you're in cross system, so you know what to do when you're in cross system.
So same technique as we pretty much have been speaking about throughout the whole class. When you are changing from side to side, it doesn't matter where you're repeating. Technique is going to be the same for back cross. You need to create space, heel up, flexing the knee, and that's how you're going to create the space for that leg to cross. We're still doing tight crosses here. So this means that you really want to try and keep your ankles together as much as possible and have a smooth transition by going toes and heel and not full flat foot on the floor.
So the main difference for leaders and followers in this little sequence is that there is no, in this case, so there is a change of weight or step at least before we cross. Most of the sequences we saw so far involve a cross happening in place, this one or this one, but this one there is a step before we cross, and of course it's the same for the leader, there's a step before we cross. So it's a little bit different in terms of the sensation and the feeling and of course the timing. So a full beat to do your cross is not too much, just take your time and enjoy that synchronicity of movement. Here. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. One thing as a leader that I will recognize, so it's a bit tricky to have this sequence understood in the body because I'm doing something different with my feet than I do with my embrace. So of course it's important to stay focused on the follower and make sure that every time you transfer the weight you understand which leg for her is crossing. So it's a little bit of focused concentration that you need to have here because you need to think of the follower's leg, but at the same time of course you need to continue doing the footwork, which is the opposite, so that actually when it actually helps to have a little bit of rotation to the right. If there's no rotation to the right, things start to be a bit tight, it doesn't feel like you have much space. So as I'm going into my front leg, being the right leg, forward, I don't think of a forward step this way, I think of forward step with rotation, because it's going to help the follower understand that she needs to send her right leg back and already prepared for the next cross. So that little rotation to the right is going to be a useful tool for your leaders. 1 and 2. Oh, see, I messed with my foot here. So again, here, change of weight. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and so on and so forth. 3 and 4, and maybe finishing this way. So I'll show you with music. practice.
Decí que soy culpable de toda tu tristeza, de todo el entorno mío se vuelve sin amor, y al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza, como por una copa repleta de licor. Yo quiero que me digas con calma y siempre fuerte, y que en las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad, clave tus ojos lindos, sombreados por mi noche, y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Ahora yo sentí tu primer beso, ahora me llamó tu corazón, y mi alegría fue cantando en la colera por aquella calle larga de nuestros pies.
So, one little tip for leaders that will help is understanding one fundamental aspect of this little sequence here in cross system, is that you are going to lead not only, of course, with your frame, but the space that you create with your hips is going to call that hip forward for the follower. Therefore, she's going to want to cross. Yes. So rather than doing something a bit flat this way here, you're going to make it with a little bit of hip in to call that foot in every time you do a cross. So this is why you can not only have a better cross, leaders, like with your feet a bit more together, but it's going to be clearer for the follower because you're sending that leg inwards. 1 and in, 2 and in, and so on and so forth. Good. So let's finish with one last example of what we can do with crosses. I call them force crosses, and you can do them on both sides. This you probably have seen before. Again, it's a classic. Here, and you force the cross of the follower. So you can equally do it in open or close embrace. Open embrace or close embrace is going to work the same way. But what you need to do here is establish contact with the thigh of the follower, and do not think that you're pushing with the hip this time. You're pushing because your back leg is actually being repositioned to a back cross. Your back cross is a wide cross, this one, and this actually transfer of axis is what is pushing the follower to do the cross.
So this is a deep cross, therefore I'm not going to be concerned in keeping my ankles together. I'm going to be just concerned to make sure that my transfer of the weight is smoother in open position. So again, how wide the cross is going to be depends on how wide the step of the leader is going to be. So there's no way of measuring it in advance. Just make sure that your footwork is articulate and you're ready to have smooth transitions at all times.
As a leader, what I need to do is to make sure that I land very safely on my right, one, and here is when I need to recover. So I need to calm down the energy so that the follower understands she has to collect, and maybe I leave from here. So I can't rush the exit. There's a moment when I need to make the follower feel that there's not a second back force cross. I go up a little bit before I go forward.
Okay, should we try again? Yeah.
Here, 1 and 2, 3. See this little kind of up movement, and that indicates the exit, because of course you could repeat that for more than once. 1 and 2 and up to exit. How many is up to you guys? Of course up to the music.
Okay, should we also explain to the other side?
Why not? So the other side is going to, you can actually start on this side here, and you're going to have to rotate your partner, rotate yourself, and attack with this time the left leg. Yeah, so there's a sharp pivot to be made here after the second or the first one. To pivot your partner first, so always pivot your partner first. And as she's starting to pivot, then you pivot yourself. It's very difficult to do both at the same time, so there's a very tighty little time delay for your pivot leaders. So wait for her to start pivoting and use that time to pivot yourself. Here, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you can exit with a side step. Maybe this angle will be 2 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and finish there. So The technique on both sides is the same. Of course, you'll feel that the force cross to the left is harder to do because of the embrace, it's a bit in the way. So make sure that you don't have your too much pressure on the left arm. Relax it a bit so that you can enter the space of the follower. If you have this arm a bit too tight, a bit too strong, then you push the follower away and then she might actually stumble.
So I think one thing that I find for follow to be really helpful is the compression of the embrace. It starts on one side and then goes all the way to the other side. So then it keeps me on that setting, on that mode of going to cross on the other side. It makes it more predictable for me. So I feel that the compression happens on one side and the pivot keeps the compression, goes straight into the other side.
Here, 1 and 2, E, 1 and 2, and that's it. Good.
Music?
Music. Practice.
De toda tu tristeza, que todo en torno mío se vuelve sin sabor, y al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza como por una copa repleta de licor. Yo quiero que me dices con calma y sin reproche, y que en las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad claves tus ojos negros sombreados por mi noche, y un rato de tu vida me dé su claridad. Ahora yo sentí tu primer beso, ahora me llamó tu corazón y mi alegría fue cantando.
So I have a little tip for leaders. If you want to practice, what I suggest you do is really go and displace your axis here and repeat 1 and 2. Now note one thing, leaders, is that I'm using dissociation as I'm doing my force cross. I'm not being straight this way. I use the full extent of my dissociation because it's going to help my follower. The tricky part, it's not too tricky, but the more difficult part here is when you have to change sides. Make sure that as you are changing sides, you don't actually get too close to your partner as you do your fourth step before you turn, because then you will not have any space for the hips to pass. Yeah? So the step that is going to be the fourth step on your right leg, leaders, as you exit, is going to have to open a little bit the embrace if you went to the embrace before, so that you are able to reposition yourself on the other side for that next step to happen.
So a tip for the followers would be engage your center at the moment of that pivot. Remember that you're going to have your upper body facing the leader when you pivot in the other side. That's why that compression helps. So keep that focus to have a sharper pivot and more reaction to stay connected to the leader. And again, try to use those transitions that we spoke about, right foot articulation, so that we don't get strange ways of stepping and making too much noise and feeling awkward. There's no need for that when you know how to use proper foot articulation.
Here, 1, and take your time, leaders. You pivot your partner, you pivot yourself, and then same thing here when you push that leg. Now, perhaps because of the embrace, it will feel more like a back cross than it feels like a back cross in the first place. The first feels a little bit like a wide cross to the back, while the second one feels a little bit more as a back cross. And again, that's because of the embrace, because we need to adapt how we lead. Here, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Can you repeat this on both sides? Yes, you can. On the left hand side, it's a little bit more complicated. But it's possible. A little bit more unusual, perhaps.
Okay, so I think it's time to wrap up.
Okay, so let's wrap up today with our little demonstration. So we hope you enjoyed it. As we announced earlier, there's a second session on the crosses that is being planned. So take a look at the library in the next week or two if you are interested in knowing a bit more about crosses and how to play with them.
Okay.
Alright, here we go, Donato.
De toda tu tristeza, que todo en torno mío se vuelve sin sabor, y al darme tu cariño perdiste la cabeza como por una copa repleta de licor. Yo quiero que me dices con calma y sin reproche, y que en las aguas mansas de mi sinceridad clave tus ojos negros sombreados por mi noche, y un rayo de tu vida me dé su claridad. Ahora yo sentí tu primer beso, ahora me llamó tu corazón y mi alegría fue cantando en la coleta por aquella calle larga de nuestra unión. Ahora hoy me muero por tu olvido, ahora voy sangrando mi dolor. Y la luna, si el sol es ella luna, quebrarán estas tinieblas donde me perdió tu amor.
Thank you for joining today, guys. We hope that you had a good time, and we see you soon, online or in person.
See you for the next class.